Welcome back to Beyond Zenith, the podcast where we go beyond the title. I'm your co-host, Kian Wilkinson, and today I'm joined by Ashley Aruffo. Ashley, for anyone who hasn't come across you before, please give a 30-second intro into who you are and what Craft is, and then we'll get into the story behind it.
Totally. So I am the VP of product at Craft.co. We are a supplier intelligence tool. We operate particularly in the defense industrial base, and we help organizations protect their IP and what they're building and how they build it from potential risks.
Thank you, Ashley. And before we get into what Craft is today and the great work that you guys are doing, I just want to bring it right back to your journey into tech. When we spoke, you mentioned, you went straight from Stanford into a five-person startup where you were doing everything. Looking back, do you think that was the best possible grounding for everything that came after?
Oh yeah. I think a lot about my peers and what people did for their first roles. And they usually, you get exposed to some mentor, right, who teaches you some specialty, like an apprenticeship. And I feel like being thrown into a startup where you had to wear every single hat, I was able to experience the build side, the sales side, the recruiting side, the business operations, and I was able to navigate through the difficulties of each, but also it enabled me to kind of find my sweet spot, what I most enjoyed doing, which was more on the build side. It's a really wonderful experience to learn about someone's problem and then see the solutions as they're being built and be have your hands on the keys making it happen.
Nice. And our interest, is there anything you don't miss from having to do everything?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I think that my first role, I was doing a ton of sales too, and I was doing in-person pitching. And I remember saying, if we could just get our solution, more people could get our solution out, it'd be so much more exciting because what we're building is so exciting. So literally, that was my first decision or trigger point to move to the next position was like, what would happen if the things that I was working on and the solutions I was solving there was just a team of people ready to get it in more people's hands. So I don't totally miss it, but we're all in sales, as our VP of sales says. So you never leave sales behind.
100% everybody's a stakeholder, I've always been told as well.
Hmm.
And you have a serious sports background. How does that shape the way you lead and give feedback today?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think feedback is such a gift when done right. And in sports, the nature of feedback is instant, right? You're up against another team, you're playing for something that you have to win, and it's in a fixed time. So I feel like the difference today that I see in sports versus the workplace is you instantly are able to correct, pull someone aside, and get back out on the field. The nature of work's not like that. It's for one, we're distributed teams, so we're virtual. You're going back to back, meeting to meeting, and you don't really get that. Come over to the water cooler. Let's just tweak this. And you don't really get as many at bats, right? You're constantly talking to different prospects, but it's not the same as that goal. Let's just go score the next. So for me, it's so important in the workspace to give it as fast as possible, even if it means kind of staying back an extra, like, do you just have 5 more minutes today, or can we delay that next call just for a second, just to tweak? But yeah, I think feedback is really what greases the wheels on a team.
Couldn't agree more. But what would you say the biggest differences are between how it's delivered in sports versus workplace?
I think in sports, because most of the time you're doing something so physical, when you deliver it, you kind of know and you can see the change. And so it's not, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who take things personally in sports, but you kind of do it, you physically play the game and you walk away. What I've noticed in the workplace is because this is most people's chosen career paths, there's a really strong internalization of what's being said to them. And so you have to find this delicate balance of detaching whatever feedback you're giving as like, it's just a behavior. It's just, you can take it, you can leave it. I'm giving it to you. This is just what I'm seeing. Um, and that response and metering it correctly and learning when to present it, there's a delicate balance to doing it right versus sort of the direct, quick, I need this, we got to tweak it in a game.
And is there like an approach that stuck with you since you started playing sports in the early days to today in terms of how you deliver feedback?
Ooh, sports is pretty interesting. I feel like both in my early career, I got some unique experiences that I've actually taken with me more. But in both cases, I think it really comes down to the spirit of like wanting to win and wanting to get to the next place. When I got into my second role, where I was a product manager at Energage, I got this incredibly unique experience to work in catalytic coaching, was what the technology and the IP was called. And it was all, I think I was tapped into the product line because of my sports background, and it was coaching and mentoring. So everyone said, oh, this is something, Ashley could latch on to. Um, but that framework was so meaningful. And at the time, I thought, most people know this. I know we can do this isn't hard. These are simple concepts. But human behavior is really complex and everyone's metered in their own way. And so what I learned through that coaching process, it stuck with me. And ironically, as you're at the top in leadership positions, that level of understanding how to give feedback in the workplace and how to interact as a manager and how to manage up all came from that process of, I guess, tapped in from sports into coaching. And, the rest is history.
Well, thank you for sharing that as well. And coming to today in product teams, when things do go wrong inside a product team, what is usually the real reason underneath it, and how do you diagnose it quickly?
Ooh, product teams particularly. Um, I'm just going to say like the entire build team and squad. So typically I find the handoffs, right? When something's going wrong in something you're building, it typically happens when the triads aren't in sync, or time has passed. And again, I'm going to get to virtual because we virtually build, but also in a physical environment, this happens. You get towards the end of the week, everyone thinks they're super buttoned up. It's a Friday afternoon. You've checked you're in the lower environments and you're testing, everything looks great. We've sunk with the entire rest of the organization. We're about to watch this great thing. And they're, Friday afternoon, someone's just typing away. It's about ready to go out. And then Monday shows up and you're like, we were all on the same path on Friday. What's going on? No, obviously we don't release big things on Fridays because no one wants to give their weekends away. But yeah, it often happens in the handoffs and just not being completely aligned, which gets back to, the glue, the feedback, and how you work together.
100%. And out of interest, like everyone, well, what I'm seeing in terms of trend at the moment is everyone wants to get people back in the office. Since pre-COVID, like we're seeing like 3, 4, like even some people are talking 5 days a week now. What do you think people get wrong about office culture and having to have high performing teams in the office compared to obviously what you guys are doing, delivering at such a velocity, being global?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both mindsets. Um, I think I always think it's a little silly to assume that in-person people are super efficient, because some of the things that we like when we're in person are just the water cooler talk or, the one-on-one walk around the block. And those are very healthy. And so what Craft does is we try once a quarter. Sometimes it's more frequent depending on the function to fly everyone together so that we're getting that human connection, so that we're greasing the wheels, giving the hard feedback, making adjustments. But there's a benefit to, you have a team, you have multiple teams in different time zones, and something needs to be changed or tweaked, or you have global clients, and you just need to be able to hand it quickly somewhere else. And so we look at our hubs, and we cover San Francisco, we cover the East Coast, we cover Europe, and I always say I live on the sweet spot because I'm in the middle because I can wake up early, work with the build team. Some of our senior leadership's in California, so I get this lull in the mid-afternoon, but at night I still have a team that I'm interacting with, and it can be really beneficial. You just have to create the right life boundaries to make sure that you're compartmentalizing, but you're getting the best of both worlds.
And what would you say is like something you would tell someone who's looking at craft on the outside that might think that's the kind of business I want to join? Like, what do craft look for? Because obviously, again, you've got global reach. It means that almost you can tap into any talent pool.
Yeah, so I mean, Kraft really looks for this mindset of rapid growth mindset and really delivering excellence. When we're interviewing or meeting people, there's always the traditional frameworks of does your skill meet the role? Um, But in the discovery interview training I had very early in product, a lot of it's sort of through storytelling. So a lot of times we're looking for people who are telling stories about this natural desire. Also, we've done a little bit of a pivot over the past couple years, really doubling down on our differentiation in the defense industrial base. And a lot of our mission is to protect the supply lines and the people working on them. And so, a lot of what we also look for now is people who are committed to that mission, mostly because that's where we're finding we're solving the most problems. And it's something really important to certain people who have been impacted. Geopolitics, this is the time for people to kind of align with their personal values. So we also look for that.
And you obviously touched on craft there in terms of what kind of craft touches on the areas that it focuses on. Can you take me back to the very beginning of craft and how the business found its place in the world?
um, Ilya, who's our founder, he had this vision of having intelligence on companies. And he wanted to know absolutely everything you could. If there's a digital footprint, we wanted to bring it into our product. And one of the data sets that seems kind of superficial, where do companies operate? We had really rich intelligence. And so it was happening naturally as people were just using search engines, they were coming to Craft and we were getting millions of hits. What happened was with the defense industrial base and with government agencies, they do a deep level of diligence on where companies operate, both to make sure that they're not engaging in risky regions of the world and that they're also, putting trust in the vendors that they're investing in. And so they came to us. We kind of got in a short amount of time organizations that were doing this heightened diligence, and that data set drew them in. And then eventually they saw all of the world of data that we were attempting to gather. And they helped us as much as we helped them kind of find the right level of diligence for the job. And so that's really where our differentiation came to be. We found levels of diligence that would protect defense IP, protect those supply lines, while also helping you just know who you're doing business with.
Nice. And one of the things that always comes up when I speak to founders, especially more early stage businesses, is product market fit. How did it feel when that moment happened?
I mean, it's kind of an unleash, right? When you find product market fit, because for the product side, you get to kind of slow down. I feel like when you're kind of trying to find product market fit and making sure you're right in the right industries, there's just so many directions you can take capabilities, and you really have to be careful of feature factory, right? And you have a sales team that's gun in and everyone wants to sell a little bit ahead of the roadmap, and when you get to the right subset of people who share the same problem, oh, it's just the best feeling in the world is you come in and you start delivering these roadmaps and people are like, oh, you can do that. That would be wonderful. I actually need that. Versus, oh, it'd be nice if I had my magic wand, I'd like this and this spell and this spell and this spell, and you just really don't know if you could replicate that. And I mean, for craft, it's just an exciting moment, especially on the build team, to truly know the problems that we're solving for and knowing that you can do it in a unique and differentiated way because the focus is finally where it needs to be. So product market fit for builders, it's just like it's a freedom that, it's difficult. When you're in the early stages, it's not that easy.
100%. And like for anyone who has never come across supply intelligence before, how would you describe what Craft does in the simplest way possible?
I like to say that craft is like the sixth sense of your supply chain. And what I mean by sixth sense is there's a lot of organizations that try and build intelligence on companies, not just companies, people, product lines, commodities. And what happens is you end up getting this like fire hose of data. Their digital footprints are massive. LLMs can gather so much information on organizations and companies, and then there's so much conflicting organization on companies. And so we build towards this sixth sense of telling you exactly what you need to know in the moments you need to know it. So if we've escalated fraud, we better escalate that fraud before you've hit contracting. Or if we find that there's some violation or there's some potential IP leakage happening, we try and get it to the individuals who need to know about it instead of, shooting the fire hose right at our end users and saying, there's 900 different signals you got this week. Ours are very metered. They're to the right people and to the right teams. And what we've done is we've built collaboration tooling to make sure that this is something you got to kick to cyber, kick it to cyber. Like if this is something that's truly necessary for procurement, all right, we're going to kick you and show you where you need to be. Um, and I think something that's very different about what Craft does is there's a lot of organizations out there that are just saying, oh, AI can replace this job, AI can replace that job. Uh, our clients love that the product that we're building is a tool to help people do their job better. So a lot of the way that we couch information or escalate information, it's not alarmist. You're not going to see flashing lights and bells and whistles and a lot of urgency and you must do this. A lot of it's sort of like if I were sitting in your role and I only had 5 minutes, look here. And here are the organizations who have done the same thing. And so a lot of that came through the guidance of the teams we were building for. But every time we show it to a prospect now, they echo the same thing. They're like, oh, thank goodness. I feel like sometimes these other systems I'm sitting down with make me feel like there's too much to be done and there's problems everywhere.
And I know that a lot of the work that it does replace, though, is like very timely, let's say, diligence work. Like, for example, it replaces like 6 hours worth of, sorry, diligence work. Like, what was someone actually doing before that took up that much time that the new process of craft now replaces that?
Yeah, so a lot of what was happening was it was research, and you can think about this in supplier intelligence and procurement, but you can also just think about it as like any student doing research. You'd kind of have to figure out, okay, what sources do I need? I have to hit each of those individual sources and understand. I want to make sure that they're financially capable. I want to understand that they haven't done anything fraudulent. I want to understand what their connections are to their networks. Are there any people that I shouldn't be doing business with at this company? And so you'd usually have to traverse the stream of search queries, right? Where I have to make sure that I've gone down this path and that path. And so it was hours and hours of tying information together, right? And what that did was it slowed you down. You couldn't make quick decisions if you had to multi-source and find another vendor. You still have these long stage RFPs, but there was just small teams of individuals, and then people were building more teams of people to just sit and do research. And the capabilities that Craft has, with a click of a button, you're getting all of these trusted sources. They've already been integrated together. They've been, you don't have to worry about your prompts and harnessing the prompts and what you're feeding and how you're shaping your queries. It comes together in this neat bundled package because you still have a lot more work to do. That was just the first step. That was the research. Now you have to go mitigate all of these things that you're finding and make sure that you're buttoned up whenever you make your funding decision or you're going to expand business with a company.
And what would you say is one misconception that people have about the product until they actually use it?
Oh my goodness. I think that there have been so many products out there that have attempted to do some of what we're doing. And I can tell with a lot of our prospects, there's so many skeptics because they've been with other solutions that say they do what we do. And the beauty in craft is because we've built for the right subgroup of people, you can start day one. Like it is a matter of there's no 3 week onboarding. I mean, don't get me wrong, large enterprises sometimes like that time with a new tool to just like really feel it out and make sure everyone's trained. But you can get in the first week and, find information that you've never seen before. We have people who come in, they're about to go into, an impromptu call with a vendor. They click a button, they're bringing it up with a vendor, and the vendor's like, wow, yes, we do have that financial problem, but how are you guys so on top of it? And the answer is that level of diligence that took hours to do, you can do and have context going into any conversation. So it's very fun. But in short, we get that intel really fast.
Do you have any like success moments that like makes you realize again like why you're doing this?
Oh yeah, we had a client, and honestly, the sales process, a lot of times, trying to explain the value of intelligence, it's not really the intelligence. The value is, in scenarios that I just spoke about, it's finding this information that's going to change the way you interact with whoever you're doing business with. But we were in a sales process of a pretty large company that, did very important work. And we were able to identify things that they hadn't seen conceived of before in different areas where, everyone checks a box. They have supplier surveys. They ask if you're certified. Have you done this, this, and this? And the methodology that some of our data partners have is they find, they go out onto the dark web. They can find a leaked contract. They can find information that's just sitting out there. And when you bring all of those methodologies into one tool, you start surfacing things people didn't even know you could surface. And it's moments like that. You're on a sales call and you're about to jump into, and the next thing we're building. But the moment where you say, oh, what we already have is changing the way you do business, it's kind of that light up moment.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely, from everything you say, you can already see the value, like, especially for organizations that like can't take risks and you just take away the time to have to find out if a supplier they're working with is a risk or not. And you can see that already. Do you find like in terms of the types of businesses that want to buy the product straight away are like more enterprise? Do you find that mid-sized big businesses still like get it? Because I imagine that enterprises, the sales cycle is a lot longer, but at the same time, is like for them risk is huge, especially for like big banks.
Yeah, big banks, really large manufacturers. The thing is, the intelligence, intel, and having context on your supplier is great at any stage. But usually, when you're smaller, your supplier base is smaller, and you're usually interacting with them more frequently. As you grow and as you grow up, build out your supply chains to reduce operational risks, you usually multi-source vendors, right? So you don't just have, one widget maker, you may have 20 widget makers and you're trying to get the inventory as fast as you can and you're trying to grow your business. So large enterprises are just dealing with a much larger network. That network also comes with a lot of unseen connections. And traditionally it's wild to happen. You have a vendor, you ask them, do you operate in these regions? Do you follow best practices? And the answer is a short, of course we do. Nope. We don't operate in bad regions. And the answer is a digital footprint can actually tell a lot about an organization, even information they might not be willing to volunteer. And there might be reasons that they're not volunteering that information because they're changing something about their business. So, it's not that everyone's doing something nefarious. It's just, you want to present yourself in the best way possible to a client, right? So what we do is we give our clients the ability to ask more informed questions. So instead of a flat survey where you say, have you done anything wrong? We kind of just pull up the records and say, this is what we found. Now ask the questions you want to ask. So it's a more informed relationship building. I think that can go well beyond just supply chain.
100%. And there is also an idea around craft being the first file, not the last file. What does that mean and why does that matter?
Yeah, so I often, it was one of at the time our VP of sales, we would say, when you do, a lot of organizations spend a lot of time on the last mile of delivery. And so there's so many technologies when you talk about supply chain in logistics, making sure whatever product you're building is delivered in quality and on time, right? It's every interview, it's an ingrained in the way people in procurement and category managers think. They're just thinking, is it coming on time? And so there's a lot of people who build control towers and they try and make sure, anticipate what's going to happen with their inventory 8 months before it happens because everyone shares the same suppliers. You got to get in line first. You got to be the first to make the phone call. When you do deep diligence up front, and when you have at the click of the button the right questions to ask, you basically are just preparing yourself upstream that first mile so that you're not running around putting fires out. I mean, there will always be world events that happen. You can't avoid a hurricane, but if you make a very rich relationship up front with your vendors, you have a mode of communication and a style of communication that engenders this trust that you can hit these head on or you can anticipate them sooner. And you're never going to replace boots on the street. It's just pairing boots on the street with what's happening in the observable world in the right way just gets you to a sweet spot.
And you mentioned the world does look very different right now in terms of trade, geopolitics, supply chain disruption. How has that changed and what are your customers coming to you for?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in the defense industrial base and with government clients, we find the laws are actually changing. It's just becoming much stricter. The level of diligence used to be, oh, I double checked here. Every organization has their own flavor, their own mission critical information. We're actually just finding that lawmakers are understanding it needs to be more secure. There are ways of doing the diligence now. So it's not, oh, I couldn't find it. I didn't know about it. It's, oh, it's there. And you definitely have to check for it. So um, basically, the nature of the type of information we brought together, we really lucked out because it's now becoming, the bar that needs to be met instead of something that was just, best practice.
And you've obviously raised Series B not too long ago. What's next for Craft?
We are on the road to Series C. We are ready. We're gearing up. Like I said, that product market fit. We know exactly the things that we're building, the problems that we're solving. It's easy. There's more excitement. We're generating more excitement on the build side. Our sales team's coming together. And so it's time to amplify. Defense industrial base, we are so passionate about that mission critical information, but there's a lot of industries that need to deeply understand that first mile level of diligence, and it can't be heavy. And so what we've done is we've removed a lot of the heaviness in the diligence, doing it in the right way, such that organizations don't have to naturally change the roles that people are playing. You don't need to hire a bunch of roles in order to do this well. It can be embedded in their processes. So we're ready to amplify.
Nice. And in terms of from a product perspective, any insights of what might be coming next?
Oh, we have a very fun summer ahead of us. Kind of like leaving it before it happens. But we have been really diving deep into this concept of smaller companies are really just defined on their people, right? And a lot of the risk that gets carried is the risk of the people who are in those companies. So we are, launching deep intelligence on both the companies and the people connected. These are highly complex networks. There's a lot of ways that you can tie. And again, being the sixth sense, we don't want to over operationalize so that we're flagging every person under the sun in a company. But we're being very diligent about the people who own the information, the people who run the company, the people who advise the company, bringing that information together so that when you're doing business with an organization, you understand something about their network and the key connections that can really impact your business, right? Supply chain weaponization, supply chain sabotage, it can happen in the most, I don't know the right term for this. It's not coming to mind, but it can seem so superficial or it can just seem so flat. And then you find one shell company away or one new advisor to a board who has some control power or one innovator who happens to jump into the same lab as the lab where you're working on something critical. That's it. It's that simple. So it's not totally easy to find in digital footprints, but again, we're just giving you that sixth sense. Go check.
Nice. Looking forward to seeing that. And you've been building with machine learning and data intelligence for a long time, well before it actually became a thing that anyone actually talks about today. Where do you think people are fundamentally getting AI wrong in terms of how it actually creates value?
That's a great question. Well, I'd say this, the most interesting part of starting out well before everyone, especially with machine learning, is you had a much smaller pool of people you were selling to. And that pool, they were trying to learn the technology and understand it, but you usually had just like one head of data science, one person leading the thread. And in order to do machine learning right, you have to have lots of records to train your models. And so it was a little bit of a chicken or the egg because you could have a really great idea to solve the problem, but you have to convince your clients to basically give access to so much information and intelligence that it was very hard to navigate. And a lot of times you're educating clients that wanted to know, is this secure? Is it safe enough? Should we give it? Should we unlock it? And now everyone, everyone's so free with their information. They're like, yeah, take it. Where do you want to put it? And we're sure it's secured. Um, and I think where people get it wrong kind of comes back to that conversation we had before, where the system can do it all, right? I find with our end users, they're always skeptical. We bring so much information together. One of our champion clients that we have in like our advisory board said it. He says, the data isn't usually wrong. It's what how people are questioning or looking at the data that's wrong. And what he means by that is there's so many different methodologies. Take the location of a company and where they operate. You could have two really great methodologies saying two very different things. You need to understand how we gathered the information and who said it and when they said it to understand those discrepancies. And often I find sometimes people just want to say, oh, it was wrong. This doesn't actually help me do my job. And the answer is just we're here to guide. It's not going to be perfect every time, but it's finding the right jobs. Again, saving hours of research just by bringing information together neatly. That's a job AI can do. That's not quite, you know, taken over everything. That everyone says the nuance of their role. It's the I think it's literally the most common term I hear everywhere is this, there's nuance to this. And the answer I say is yeah, we're very early in the stage. We're building support tools.
100%. And in your opinion, like you've been at Craft for a while now in terms of earlier stage to now potentially raising Series C on the way there, like what are the key differences from being in a product team early stage to today?
Oh, it's kind of night and day. There's sort of a way, at least on the product side and the early teams, you're just trying to come together, get as many people as you can, serving whatever the company goal is at the time. You're kind of at a race and you're wearing seven different hats, and you're trying to do your best, but there's a lot of more stuff you should be doing. And now it's a lot of like organized chaos, I would say. Product role is always kind of there's always something happening. I think that's why I'm drawn to it because there's never a boring moment and you're always learning something on the build side. But early at Craft, I think there was a philosophy that there's like one way companies grow, right? And you just need to get the right leaders in the right seat. This bad boy's going to take off. And I think that was the danger or the biggest learning for us is there's no one way companies grow, and there's no, a seasoned leader is a seasoned leader in whatever they were doing. So finding the right people in the right seats, the ones who actually have triggered change and they can sense it, they understand it, they've seen a similar problem, they may have been in the industry. Those are the leaders who can get you to the next step. So it's sort of pairing the right level of leadership with your immediate goals, looking towards the long term versus, finding someone who's already been at the top and bringing them just to the startup and they're just going to fix everything.
Makes sense. And for you, what would you say to Ashley that first started at Craft 2 versus where you are today?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. First starting out at Craft. I mean, I think what's unique about Craft is this is one position I've been here. This is my longest career stint. I'm coming up literally in 2 days, 5 years at the company. It's so wild. Yeah. And you know, I don't know if I would need to coach myself through it, but I think the thing that I tell everyone is craft, and not all startups are like this, but craft changes every year in a very unique way that I come back and it's not the same company, right? I don't, there's a lull that you kind of sometimes get, year two or three, you're like, have I reached my peak? Have we reached our peak? Or are we getting to the next step? Have we solved that problem? And here it's like, no, it's a new game. It's a new playing field. So it's a very sticky spot for me, despite statistics that say that our age group is supposed to jump every couple of years.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, they say this about millennials and especially Gen Z. It's like, traditionally baby boomers would stay in roles for 15, 20 years. And it's very common, right? For us to just couple years. How do people think about companies? What's the nature of a company, especially with AI and technology? Are these companies going to be around as long? And you kind of get to a point in your career where you say, I'm committed to the mission. I'm committed to the next phase and I'm gonna, ride the road. So it's fun.
Yeah, and that always comes from leadership, right? In
It
terms of
does.
making sure people stay aligned, people are still bought into the mission, because so many people think that sometimes jumping ship, especially nowadays, like delayed gratification, people don't want to do anymore. So that sometimes they
Yeah.
think if I jump ship, then I'll get a pay rise, I'll get the next job, so forth. But sometimes sticking it out, that's where the real growth is.
Yeah, so the beauty of working in an employee engagement company, you learn so much about the nature of work. And one of the stats that always stuck in my head is just at any given moment, 75% of adult Americans are disengaged with their job. I mean, they just truly don't enjoy. Yeah. And working at that company, there's all these different formulas of what makes you stay and why you work. And a lot of it has to do with your manager. Like you could be thinking that you're learning. Sometimes you will take extra time in your time off and just learn a skill, but you'll stay, usually stay because of your manager. And so I always think about that as I go into leadership. It's like people will stay when they have trust, when they're going together and they know the person who's leading them is going to have their back when they get to the next room. And a lot of that just comes again from management training and the group of people you bring together. But I also think about that at Craft a lot. It's, you got to dial up the right managers and you got to give them space to run their team.
100%. And I was going to ask you then, in terms of like leadership and management, in your opinion, like what makes a great manager? Because there's normally two types of styles I see. There is the I'm going to work you into the ground. I'm going to micromanage you. They think that almost like, whipping people into shape, so to speak, is going to get results. And then there's the whole other end where it's like, do what you want, like make sure that, it gets delivered, but you have freedom and autonomy to deliver. Like, in your opinion, what makes a great manager?
It's never those extremes, right? It's always something like when you're straight down the middle. Um, I have this unique style where I like to stay close to the technology just because it's changing so much. And it's my favorite part of the day, right? So I just like to be very deep into what every individual contributor is doing, more for learning and the excitement of how I'm going to convey it to other people when we talk about our vision. And when you stay close as a manager, not to how people execute the tasks or what tasks they're executing, or are they doing it in the perfect way? When you stay close to the nature of how something's being built and you truly try and learn and understand and engage with how someone's thinking about solving the problems, I think there's a delicate balance. It's not micromanagement. It's just a deep curiosity in how someone's operating or learning and working through a problem. Um, it's totally not my style to just like, I walk away when it comes to giving people autonomy. I will never tell someone they have to make a decision a certain way. I will tell them, like, you will be held accountable for this decision. Everything is measured at Craft. Um, but yeah, I find when people have that philosophy in management, I'm just going to walk away. They rarely also have the answers they need to understand how the business is operating. Is someone overworked, or do we need to bring out that next role, or what are we missing in this skill set that's going to dial up the other skill set? So I'm definitely stay close to the work. Yeah.
I was always told this by my previous manager and now my co-founder, and she always said it because that then that way people can't BS you and they can't say that no, it's done like this, or they don't this is that's not how it works. And rather she used to be like, no, I know because I still do the job. Whereas like when I worked for a corporate business, is that you'd get people in like very senior roles that hadn't been on the tools, so to speak, like for 10 years. And it's like, how can you drive decisions if you don't actually know because you're not close enough to either the customer, the product, etc.
Yeah, I feel like the communication patterns, I've worked with some of those leaders that are very far removed from the work. The communication patterns is also sort of like a lack of patience. Like they've been there, they've done it, so what you're saying is wrong, and the answer is like, just go back, just look under the hood. There's usually more than one reason for something. So very interesting.
100%. And out of interest, like, what is the thing about the work that you're doing that still genuinely excites you? and the part that the part that makes you keep going?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there's multiple things. First and foremost, the team that we've built. I genuinely, from it's the management side, but I feel like I'm on the team. I genuinely love how hard our team works. I love how they interact together. I have so much respect for our engineers and what they do. And there's people who are passionate about their work, and I know sleep is so important. As a mom of three, I understand sleep is important, but there are, when you find someone who really likes what they're doing and you see a commit or you see like a message at midnight because they don't want to turn it off, right? I think it is so fun to work with those people. They usually have so much to say. From an engineering perspective, sometimes you have to sit and listen. They don't want to do it in a big room. Some engineers they do, and it's wonderful. um, but first and foremost, like most people stay for people. Um, so that's definitely one. And then honestly, with the intelligence that we're building and what you can learn about companies and how critically important it is, I don't Ashley, year one didn't really understand, couldn't really grok. I would listen to these agencies, I would listen to the stories, and I'd say, oh, okay. But then when you get into the product lines and the types of things that are being built, my goodness, the even the innovation of the product lines that are being built in the defense industry, it's fascinating. Gets close to sci-fi, right? And so you then all the sci-fi fans are here because they want to know how close we are to it. But yeah, it's continuous learning. It's definitely a fun spot to be.
And what's one thing that you would say to the listeners about Craft's company culture that they won't maybe get from looking online about what your company's doing, a job posting?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to learn about a company culture on a job post, and it's super hard to go to a website. I also find, the glass doors and the ratings. You rarely see the people who like love their job be like, let me remember to go say how much I love my job. So find those postings to be very skewed. It's kind of like when you're shopping and you see that like one negative post on a product, and I'm like, okay, now I want to go understand that poster. Are they just like saying every product bad, or is it true? Is there a pattern? Um, I think the nature of where craft is right now, we have so many people they're not new to the team anymore. Like I said, we've got years under our belts now. And when you work with people for years, you can anticipate how they're going to work and how it's going to work. And you get past that situation where like everyone's just trying to figure out how we're going to glue together, what gaps we have that we don't have. It's just really, really refreshing to know the people you're working with, having gone through changes in the company and knowing that, when you move ahead, you're going to be in lockstep. It's a really nice feeling that you don't get everywhere.
Awesome. And attrition is always the thing that tells if a company's good or not. So the fact that you guys still have loads of people that have been there from the start tells everything you need to know.
It is. And, everyone, we always say bittersweet when people leave because we always really wish that everyone's going to have their best next experience. But even people who have left craft, it's a really unique company. I've stayed in better touch as well, just because it's the nature, whoever is tapping someone in has that innate connection or that ability, and we're finding like-minded people, and so it's so nice to have even the alums together. We're all cheering for each other.
Nice. And what do you want someone listening to this to walk away thinking about you and about Craft?
I think the mission criticalness of what we do. The defense industry, it's a serious business, and um, we did the pre-product market fit where we kind of threw out our offering to many an industry, and everyone kind of had a little light touch to it. I think when you center down and you think about the problems that we're solving today, they're critically important. It's work that everyone should be doing. I spoke about this to our head of GTM yesterday, and there's a reason why these laws are being written. Um, and it's powerful. It's powerful to be in a technology and in a space where, the laws are really dictating that this type of technology is needed. So it's a win when you get to this phase of a company.
Wow, that is actually amazing. That you're almost writing or being part of a newly written law.
It's been the case, and for years, our VP of sales has been right on the front line, tracking the laws, understanding Congress. He's, been feeding it to us. But Brian's done an amazing job. And another unique thing that we did at Craft this past year is we just really brought true practitioners, tool users into the company. So, you're onboarding someone and they're like, I've used this tool for years. It's just it's a different style, it's a different nature, and you get way better, quicker knowledge symmetry. It's great.
That's awesome. And Ashley, I want to say thank you for joining me today on Beyond Zenith. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and wishing you all the best, and keen to see Craft's Series C.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been a blast. And